The Senate Committee on Finance will come to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Huffman,
Here.
Hinojosa,
Present.
Bittencourt, Campbell, Creighton, Flores, Hall, Hancock, Hughes, Colcourse, Nichols, Paxton, Perry, Schwartner, West, Whitmire,
Yes.
Zaffarini.
All right, members, I think we have some members at other committees, so we're going to try to get through this agenda and get to House Bill 1 as well today. But Senator Schwartner, are you ready on SJR 56?
I am. Thank you,
You're
Madam Chair.
recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, as you might recall, this committee's discussion at the end of January about acting during a time of plentiful assets and revenue to reinforce our state's reserves for future needs. SJR proposes an amendment to the Texas Constitution to raise the cap on the maximum biennial ESF balance from 10 to 15% of certain general revenue deposited to the account. Currently, should the balance reach the cap, as is projected to do so in 2025, the comptroller may reduce or eliminate transfers to the ESF and credit interest earned on the ESF balance to the General Revenue Fund. As Texas grows, so should its savings account, and SJR 56 provides a tool to do that. There is a committee substitute.
All right, Senator Schwartner sends up the committee substitute. You recognize on the substitute.
After further discussion with the comptroller and their role in investing the ESF funds for the benefit of the state, the need for flexibility to adjust investment amounts was discussed, and to that end, the committee substitute removes language regarding the credit of investment income. So with that, it's basically a one-line strike from 10 to 15,
Okay.
and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Senator Schwartner? We have a resource witness from the Comptroller's Office, Tom Carra. Do you mind coming up, Tom, so we can ask you a couple of questions? Oh, okay. Yeah, I was looking at the fiscal note, and I know LBB produces this, so we might need LBB, I'm not sure. But it has a significant fiscal note, but that's moving forward. So you explain to us how that works so the committee fully understands.
Sure.
the law for this. Yeah.
This is Tom Curra, Controller's Office. So under current law, when we hit the ESF cap, there would, if the transfers that would go to the Economic Stabilization Fund will instead remain in general revenue, and the BRE projected that we would hit the cap in 25. After accounting for SB 30, we would hit the cap in fiscal 26. By raising the cap, the money that would have remained in GR will instead go to the Economic Stabilization Fund. So that's the reason for the loss to GR there. It's going to the ESF rather than remaining in GR.
Right, so looking towards the future, are we still thinking 26? That's kind of my next question.
Yes, it's 26 under current forecast with SB 30 taken into account. We would hit it in 26 rather than 25 as was projected in the BRE.
So when it looks like it's about $4 billion a year? Do you have those
yeah.
numbers? Is that kind of what y'all have too?
Under the filed version of the bill, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If we move the cap to 15%, then there's some other interaction. I mean, yes, that's still correct. It's $4 billion. Sorry, because we would no longer be making those transfers to the ESF. We would be making the transfers to the ESF rather than leaving the money in general revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just wanted to clarify, kind
Right.
of lay that out, that in 26, instead of having the $4 billion for GR, that instead it would go into the ESF. So
Right.
policy decision, but it is something to think about. Yeah.
Just a broader context. I was here in 11. When we came in a tough budgetary cycle, as many of them died, most of them died, have been here during tough budgetary cycles, and it's always nice to know you have the ability to do what you need to do by having a plentiful savings account that can smoothen out the volatility of our economic cycles here in Texas. And as Texas grows, we need, in my opinion, a larger savings account to modulate those volatile periods.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you for being here.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Do you have any cards? Nope. All right, we don't have any cards on that, so we'll open and close public testimony. Let's see, who else do we have?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
Yes, thank you, Senator Shortner. Senator West, would you happen to be ready on SB 1000? You're recognized.
Madam Chair, thank you very much, and members. Madam Chair, thank you for helping work on this particular bill along with the Lieutenant Governor's office. I initially filed this bill in order to reduce sales tax, given that we're doing really historic property tax reduction for the citizens of the state of Texas. I thought it important to also try to do sales tax reduction. The initial bill as filed would have reduced the state sales tax from 6.25 to 5.75. But visiting with the Lieutenant Governor, Chairman Huffman, and others, we decided to have what will be known as a surplus sales tax holiday, which will be in October of this year, 13th, 14th, and 15th. And so that's what the committee substitute does.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of Senator West? Why don't you say what is going to be exempted, just so we have that out there?
Well, what will be exempted is clothes and shoes up to $200. Notice it's the 13th, 14th, and 15th. 15th because normally people get paid every couple of weeks, and so we wanted to kind of put it as close as possible to a payday. Didn't want to put it during Christmas, but we thought between September and December, October would be a pretty good month to do it, and so that's why we did that. So up to $200, shoes and clothes up to $200, and it'll be one time during this particular upcoming biennium, and we'll kind of look at it on an ongoing basis to see whether or not we can have another sales tax holiday.
One time. Senator Whitmire is asking if that's one time.
I'd like for it to be more than one time,
Well-
but just one time this time.
This is a surplus holiday.
Surplus sales tax
Yes.
holiday.
Not named after Senator West.
No, he wanted it, but we told him. I thought he should be dressed for success, but I think nobody liked
You know,
it.
that's not a bad idea.
Well,
maybe next
encourage
Yeah.
people. Senator Hinojosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, don't we presently have a sales tax holiday for schools, right before school starts?
Yes,
So what's the difference between this one and the other one?
it's another sales tax holiday,
That's-
benefiting citizens. It's another sales tax. We have two, actually. I think it's two sales tax holidays.
Yeah, there's one for emergency supplies.
Emergency supplies.
Yeah, like stores.
Yes.
Yeah, I think one is timed for sometime in August, I think.
August, right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that's all the questions we have. We have a couple of resource witnesses, Brad Reynolds from the Comptroller, Tom Kuroff from the Comptroller. Does anybody else want to testify on for or against SB 1000? Nope. Okay, we'll close public testimony. Y'all are too easy today.
Everybody's all over the place.
Okay, Senator Paxton, you are going to do Senator Parker's SB 927.
Pass that down.
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready.
You go ahead. Okay, sorry, I was reading.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Happy to lay out this bill on behalf of Senator Parker. It's been noted that the State Securities Board has been unable to obtain adequate levels of funding necessary to maintain an appropriate salary structure and career ladder for its financial examiners and attorneys. In addition to losing personnel to private industry, the Federal Securities and Exchange Commission frequently recruits among board staff. The SSB needs the ability to set salaries in order to retain veteran staff and remain a well-functioning agency. SB 927 seeks to address this issue by making the State Securities Board a self-directed, semi-independent agency, which would provide the agency with greater budgetary autonomy and flexibility. Self-directed and semi-independent agencies are state agencies that are supported by various fines, fees, and other revenue sources that are exempt from the appropriations process. These agencies manage and approve their own budgets and can set their own fees. In 2001, the legislature enacted the SDSI Project Act, which granted SDSI status to the Texas State Board of Public Accountancy, Texas Board of Professional Engineers, and Texas Board of Architectural Examiners. Since 2001, the legislature has granted SDSI status to many more state agencies. The State Securities Board has sought to develop a salary structure that allows them to remain competitive with other state and federal regulators, such as the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. Senate Bill 927 would make the State Securities Board a self-directed and self-independent agency. Under this status, the board would be responsible for covering its own operational costs through fees and other revenue and would not be subject to the legislative appropriations process. Funds collected by the State Securities Board would be deposited in an interest-bearing account, interest-bearing accounts in the Texas Treasury Safekeeping Trust Company. Any funds collected beyond the operational costs would be deposited in general revenue. Under Senate Bill 927, the State Securities Board would continue to function as a state agency in many ways. For example, board employees would continue to be members of the Employees Retirement System, and the board would be considered a government body for the purposes of open meetings and public information requirements. Senate Bill 927 would also require the State Securities Board to disclose and report certain financial and statistical information to ensure the legislature retains critical oversight over the board's functions. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. And I don't know how to answer any questions you may have, but I'll try to channel Senator Parker. Or maybe we have some resource with us.
Right, yeah. Well, Senator West, your light is on. Do you have a question or just?
no.
Okay. Well, Senator Paxton, you're lucky. I don't see any questions, and there's no cards, so.
Thank you.
So we'll open and close public testimony. Senator Perry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was looking for Parker laying that out. It didn't look like Parker, so.
No, it's
And no, you're not, and you're a definite improvement. Nothing against Senator Parker. The way I understand it, that this is moving towards where we did with the SBOE and what we've done with TRS and ERS. Is that a fair analysis of what we've done? And if you can't answer those, I can talk to Senator Parker.
I do have a list of some of the other state agencies that have been granted SDSI status: Texas Department of Banking, Texas Department of Savings and Mortgage Lending, Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner, and Credit Union Department.
And
Or some of the things that he's listed.
I guess I just, since it is finance and investment stuff, we end up with this conversation every year in the budget. Recently, SBO did the same thing. They're in a private corporation now. Spend a lot of money
Yep.
without our approval, subject to the fact that it comes out of investment returns, which means it reduced the returns to the beneficiaries. So it's a little bit bigger when it's investment related, is my point I would like to make. And so just timing wise, I was just hoping to say that. But
Yeah.
I've got concerns because when we do this, we always regret it
Right.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years down the road. So,
Seems to be the trend.
yeah, well, why wouldn't it be when you can set unlimited salaries and large plush overhead?
Yes.
So, thank you.
Yeah. Senator Hinojosa?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. I do remember this being an issue in the past. Senator Perry, I think you pointed out that at one time there's a very rapid trend by different state agencies that we have proper oversight, become semi-independent, and us not being able to provide direction and provide review of their budgets. So, I mean, and we stopped that for a while. Now we seem like we're coming back to the same. I know it's not your bill, but I mean, I'm just, I guess, expressing some of the same concerns that Senator Perry expressed. But
You may tell Senator Parker he needs to count his votes.
Maybe I'll see what you wanted me to lay off the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question too.
Senator, I'm sorry, Senator Nichols, I didn't see your light.
That's right.
You're recognized.
Members, that was in our work group. Well, he just left. He was in the work group. And Senator West was in the work group too. And we dug deep into the salary issue, just so all the members are aware. And the turnover they did have, we really dug into it, identified each, I guess you call it job classification, to see where the turnover was, compared that to other around the state. And in addition to the raises that were in the original bill, made any adjustments we thought were necessary to cut that down. So I felt like we were very generous in that area because they do produce a lot of money for the state. So I think they're adequately taken care of. Yes, sir.
All right.
And,
Senator Betancourt.
thank you, Madam Chair. And so, Robert, you looked at the classifications and came to the
Yes.
conclusion that, that everybody was covered, generously, in your opinion?
Yes, we did not just say, well, let's just give them 10 or 15% after the state gave them 5 or something. We broke it into each category. We had LBB go back and dig all that stuff out and do a big spreadsheet on it. And then we were very granular in doing that. And what I would say is very generous because they do produce a lot of money for the state. So I would, other than fixing their turnover, I don't think we ought to change anything related to
It sounds like a good review.
Yes.
Madam,
Senator West?
and going back to the Nichols, we did spend a lot of time, Senator Nichols and his staff spent a lot of time in bringing information back to the committee.
Yes, yeah.
In terms of the areas where we really need to focus with laser certainty on where the highest turnover rates were.
Right.
And then we focused on those individuals at that classification for purposes of raises and things of that nature.
It was a good analysis. It was appreciated. Thank y'all. Okay. All right. We don't have any cards on that, so that's the end of that bill. We'll close testimony. Okay. Okay, let's see. Senator West, do you have Senator Colcourse's bill? Understand you're recognized on Senate Bill 778.
There is a committee substitute.
Senator West sends up the committee substitute, Senate Bill 778. You're recognized on the committee substitute.
Members, the committee substitute includes a provision which allows the bill to expire September the 1st, 2025. The committee substitute requires that the Texas Juvenile Justice Department to reimburse counties which do not have a juvenile detention facility for the cost per day of housing a youth who has been committed but not yet admitted to the department. There are currently 165 juvenile probation departments which serve all 254 counties. An estimated 46 of these juvenile probation departments have a pre-adjudication detention facility.
778.
119 do not. In fiscal year 2020, the Texas Juvenile Justice Department limited the transfer of youth from juvenile probation departments several times due to the active COVID outbreaks and staffing shortages. In June 2022, the department sent out notices to all juvenile probation departments in the state that the agency was temporarily halting intake of juveniles committed to the department, cited staffing issues, and reported that they would be attempting to make room for these persons. The majority of the population, majority of the probation departments in the state which have juvenile detention facilities are in rural areas of the state with limited budgets and limited resources to serve juveniles. Our youth could cost a county $30,000 to $40,000 for a 100-day stay, waiting to be transitioned to the department in small rural counties. Okay, what does the bill do? The purpose of this bill is to ensure probation departments which do not have detention facilities are not burdened with the cost of youth on the waiting list. And I can go on and on and on.
I think we get the flavor of it, yes. Okay, we have a couple of resource witnesses, Ryan Bristol, TJJD, Emily Anderson, TJJD, and Louis, can't read, Serrano. TJJD, if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll open public testimony and call up Sydney Murphy. You can have a seat at one of the tables, and Charles Reed.
Good morning. My name is Sydney Murphy.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi.
I'll call it TJJD and let you ask.
Let me know when you're ready to
I'm
proceed.
ready for you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, I represent Polk County, which is one of those smaller rural counties with limited resources and limited monies. And so when we do have a juvenile that needs to be placed somewhere, then they have to go out of the county. And we have to pay for them to be housed or held until they can be taken to their proper placement. So part of what happens in rural counties is not only are you having to house that child that deserves all the attention and resources that you can send their direction, but you also have to transport them, and then you have to make sure you have the transportation available, someone that can watch over them while they are somewhere else. In some cases, and sometimes when we are able to get placement somewhere else, then we have to go back to the same routine of transporting and moving them back and forth. So basically what you have is counties that already have limited resources, have no availability for options, and furthermore have to expend even more monies, more taxpayer dollars supporting that child. So it's not, it becomes a risky business because there are no other options for us. If we could expand those resources, make them more taxpayer-friendly, I guess I should say, to where there's more availability in some of the rural areas, then that would certainly take care of some of that. Otherwise, I can assure you that there's not a single judge in Texas that is not looking for development appropriate placement. But sometimes in rural areas, you start running out of options. You don't have anywhere to go.
All right, Senator Nichols?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. She's one of my county judges.
I figured that.
So she's speaking on behalf, I guess, for a lot of my county judges today.
Actually, yes, I am.
I know it's expensive for the state to reimburse counties on things like that, but it's really expensive for counties as well. So if the state doesn't have a place for them to go, for a multitude of reasons, it certainly makes sense. It's going to cost somewhere, so I know we're not treating it like an unfunded mandate. It's an unfunded mandate by default. I know you're very familiar.
Yeah.
So is Dean Whitmire. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Senator Whitmire, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was
Yes, you
just
want me to
trying-
bring up someone from TJJD?
Well, that'd be a good resource, but I'll ask Madam Judge.
Okay.
First of all, it's not just a rural issue. so
Right.
We don't have to make it just a rural issue. Numbers in the larger area reflect their challenges too. But I'm just wondering about the numbers you're talking about. I understand the COVID created unique problems, but like today, how many people would you have if we went to your jail? Or not your?
Oh, no. Right now, today, we do everything we can to keep them out of our adult jail. We don't want them in there.
That was a statement on my part. Some confinement at the juvenile probation.
Right now, we have 2 or 3 that are in confinement in some other county somewhere. And keep in mind also that furthermore, we're limited because we're a regional juvenile probation.
Yeah, and that's the way it was designed
Yeah.
for counties that didn't have.
Absolutely.
So where are they?
Oh, I don't know the exact location of where they're located. We have a juvenile probation department that's second to none, and they take care of all of that.
And that's the reason I was kind of not.
Now, I'll be happy to get you those numbers.
You know, we get input from all the probation chiefs. In fact, I think the legislature is fixing to do an outstanding job under Sunset to transform it, and hopefully this will address your concern.
Yes, sir, and I agree. And I agree that it was a transformation. And furthermore, I agree that it's not just a rural issue, it's an urban issue as well. And actually, my first statement was, it's not an urban or rural, that I originally wrote down, was it's not an urban or rural, it's a Texas issue.
Yeah.
Because some of these kids get shuffled around. We have 16, 17-year-olds that get off at the bus stop and they have a list of resources and a one-way ticket from somewhere.
I don't know about,
No, yes, sir, we do.
you've seen that firsthand.
I used to be a high school counselor in an LPC. Those were my kids.
No, I thought you meant they're being released from TY.
No, they're not being released from anywhere. They're trying to stay ahead of whatever they're in trouble for somewhere else. And so they're all over the place.
That's why we have a juvenile justice system.
That's right. And that's why they are Texas children, not urban, not rural Texas children.
I'd be shocked how many that are actually sent out of state, which I've always questioned. But anyway, I think it's very manageable. Certainly under the new Sunset proposals, we're going to have newer facilities. And I was just wondering if you had a backlog right now, but it sounded like, quite frankly, your system's working. Short of you'd like to be refunded for it.
Well, we would like for the burden to be taken off of our taxpayers to one degree or another, so that, and obviously, we all want the burden to be taken off of our taxpayers.
But I guess those are your residents that are also in that system.
Yes,
I guess that-
it's both. It's a mixed group, and I'm not separating. I'm not saying, well, these are mine and these are yours. They're children. They all have to be taken care of.
Not much unlike the adult system. I mean, if we're going to have a criminal justice system, it starts locally.
Absolutely.
If you're treated there, that's great, and then you can graduate up to a state facility. But when you're
Absolutely.
locally, it's always, historically, from the beginning of time, would be the local.
Yes, sir.
Local.
We just don't have anywhere to put them. When teenagers make risky choices and decisions.
You have a regionalization, which it sounds like is working. You've sent them to areas that do have.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reed, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Charles Reed. I'm here on behalf of the Dallas County Commissioners Court testifying on this bill. I would love to be testifying in favor of this bill, but it does not apply to a county that has a detention facility. I don't think it's an understatement to say that counties with juvenile detention facilities literally saved our juvenile justice system from collapsing on itself throughout the pandemic by holding a lot of state kids in our jail. In fact, as of this morning, we have 9 kids waiting for transfer to a state facility that are Dallas County residents, and another one that is an out-of-county resident, all of which we are paying for, and under this bill would technically would get reimbursed for one of them because the county we're holding the one kid for would get reimbursed, but the 9 that we're holding waiting for transfer, we would not get reimbursed for. This is a great idea. In fact, I think any time that the state can reimburse counties for costs that we're incurring on behalf of y'all's agencies is a great idea. Unfortunately, this bill includes language that would prevent us. I mean, you could literally strike that does not have a juvenile detention facility, and this bill would be absolutely perfect for every county in the state of Texas. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your input. Thanks. All right, is there anybody, do you want to bring TJJD up, Senator Whitmire?
Yeah, just to see the
Who wants to come up from TJJD? We have a couple of questions about wait list and things like that. Whoever wants to talk. All right, Senator Whitmire?
I'm just curious to start out, what is y'all's census today?
On the wait list?
No. How many are you actually caring for?
Oh, today,
Identify yourself, please. Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. Emily Anderson, Deputy Executive Director, Support Operations and Finance. I believe in our secure facility, I looked yesterday, it was close to 550 youth in our secure facilities.
So you obviously have capacity to hold whoever the judge was speaking to. So is there a issue of y'all are not accepting one, maybe perhaps because of your staffing shortages?
That's exactly right.
So if you had, that shows you really, Judge, how messed up things are. So you've got, hundreds and I would say thousands of beds, you just don't have the staffing because of turnover and where you're located and all the things that we've heard for years. So if you had the staffing, you could actually accept the judge's clients.
That's correct.
Well, that speaks to one real solution, Your Honor. So I think the legislature is addressing it, helps on the way. Maybe in the meantime, a reimbursement for the counties makes sense, certainly in the rural areas, but I'd suggest the urban areas as well. But, Madam Chair, I know you've spent hours, and Senator Swartner, we all have, on hopefully a proposal that's going to remedy and actually create, Your Honor, regionalization facilities and limit the state capacity to a much more manageable numbers, get them away from perhaps areas that they just can't find employees, and get the youth the treatment that they badly need. So, I was just curious about your census this morning, and I knew it was 600 probably when we met in January, and it's down to 550 because many of the juvenile probation departments just don't want to send them to the state because often they come back worse than when we sent them, but under new leadership, hopefully that's being addressed as well. So, Madam Chair, I should just,
Yeah, I just want to say we have, made some significant increases in salaries, as I recall, during the interim and through, yeah, we did a 15% raise in the interim through budget execution. So we are trying to help with this issue. Senator, yeah, I mean, that's one thing. I will also say that there's 9.7 million in the supplemental bill, SB 30, to reimburse some counties. I don't know exactly, I can't remember exactly how that's distributed. So there is some money there to try to help specifically with that backlog that occurred when you started losing employees. And I guess a little bit of was COVID too, probably. Just kind of the perfect storm of things that went wrong. But we do need you to turn that place around, and because, as Senator Whitmire always says, the criminal justice system is just that, a system. And when something gets broken in one, part of it, then we feel it all over the state. So thanks for what you're doing. It's a hard job, we know.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. That's all the questions we have. All right, we'll close public testimony on Senate Bill 778. And let's see. Okay. Senator Betancourt, are you willing to lay out Senator King's 267? I think was Hancock, but he's not here, so now it's you.
Willing and able to sub.
Thank you. Well, you're recognized on Senate Bill 267.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the committee, the new committee substitute for Senate Bill 267. Since last hearing, Senator King and the chair, along with Senator Hancock, have been working to narrow the scope of the law enforcement agency professional accreditation bill to within a $20 million contingency rider in this bill. Senator King would be here, but his wife is having surgery, so we wish him the best and prayers for a quick recovery. The following are the changes included in the new substitute. Accreditation will be mandatory for agencies with 20 or more officers. The substitute will result in an estimated 556 law enforcement agencies to be professionally accredited. With other changes, focus on eligibility requirements for grant funding. The amount of the grant itself and what expenses can be reimbursed for the grant is outlined. So that's the major change, is that this is now a grant proposal. And be happy to answer more questions about the grant.
Okay. And we're limiting the size of the agencies, right?
Right.
Raising it, not limiting.
Yeah, raising it
the
to,
number.
20 or more officers. So it's your, obviously, medium or larger size departments.
Okay. Any questions? No questions. All right. Thank you.
Nope. Be happy to help.
I think I think we've already done public testimony. Yeah. All right, so that's it. Yeah. All right, the only thing left on the agenda is House Bill 1. So clearly, we don't have a quorum here, so what I'll do is just set it, we'll just do a time certain to return. We'll try to get as many members here as we can. I'll go ahead and just say 10 o'clock. Maybe that'll give people time to get here. Is that okay with people that are actually here, members? Can you all stick around? Or can you run somewhere and come back at 10?
I will run and come back.
I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Time certain, 10 o'clock, we'll come back and do House Bill 1, one way or the other. So, all right. Thank y'all. See you in recess. All right, the Senate Committee on Finance, please come to order. We have a quorum now, members. We're going to go through some real quick business. We'll take some votes, and then I'll lay out House Bill 1. Chair brings back up Senate Bill 1000 by Senator West. Senator West moves we adopt the committee substitute without objection, so ordered. Clerk, call the roll.
Bittencourt. Campbell. Creighton. Flores. Hall. Hancock. Hughes. Colcourse. Nichols. Paxton. Perry. Schwartner. West. Whitmire. Zaffarini. Hinojosa.
Aye.
Huffman.
Aye.
14 ayes, 1 nay.
14 ayes, 1 nay. The Senate Bill 1000 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Chair lays out SJR 56 by Senator Schwartner. Senator Schwartner moves we adopt the committee substitute to SJR 56 without objection, so ordered. Now, Senator Schwartner moves that this committee substitute to SJR 56 be reported favorably to the full Senate. Clerk, call the roll.
Bittencourt. Campbell. Creighton. Flores. Hall. Hancock. Hughes. Colcourse. Nichols. Paxton. Perry. Schwartner. West. Whitmire. Zaffarini. Hinojosa.
Aye.
Huffman.
Oh, okay.
15 ayes.
How many, I'm sorry?
15 ayes, no nays.
15 ayes, no nay, and I made a motion that Senator Schwartner send it up, but he's not here, so Senator Hinojosa send it up. Without objection, yeah. Okay, then SJR, committee substitute to SJR 56 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. As a matter of pending business, Chair brings back up SB 267 by Senator King, laid out by Senator Bettencourt. Senator Bettencourt moves we adopt the committee substitute, Senate Bill 267 without objection, so ordered. Now, Senator Bettencourt moves the committee substitute, Senate Bill 267 be reported favorably to the full Senate. Clerk, call the roll.
Bittencourt. Campbell. Creighton. Flores. Hall. Hancock. Hughes. Colcourse. Nichols. Paxton. Perry. Schwartner. West. Whitmire. Zaffarini. Hinojosa.
Aye.
Huffman.
Aye.
15 ayes, no nays.
There being 15 ayes, no nays, the committee substitute Senate Bill 267 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Matter of pending business, Chair brings back up Senate Bill 1232 by Senator Nichols, which related to the determination of the sufficient balance of the ESF for the purpose of allocating general revenue to that fund, the State Highway Fund. Senator Nichols moves it be reported favorably to the full Senate. Clerk, call the roll.
Bittencourt. Campbell. Creighton. Flores. Hall. Hancock. Hughes. Colcourse. Nichols. Paxton. Perry. Schwartner. West. Whitmire. Zaffarini. Hinojosa.
Aye.
Huffman.
Aye.
15 ayes, no nays.
15 ayes, no nays. Senate Bill 1232 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. All right. Senator Hinojosa, if you would recognize me, please, on House Bill 1.
This time the chair lays out House Bill 1 and recognizes Chair Huffman.
All right. And, Mr. Chairman, I do send up a committee substitute.
Senator Huffman sends up a committee substitute, which is Senate Bill 1.
Sure.
Is there any adoption to the committee substitute to House Bill 1?
Question before the adoption. I'm
Okay.
trying to figure out the appropriate time to ask a question, but before the
You
adoption.
recognize Senator West.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman and Madam Chair, I'd like to speak to the rider at Article 3, Section 61, page 280.
All right.
First of all, I believe that the rider is unconstitutional as it creates new law within a General Appropriations Act. I want to quote for you briefly from Attorney General Opinion JC 0578 from 2002 relating to the constitutionality of an appropriation rider for the Texas Historical Commission. General Corning at the time noted that the rider, moreover, attempts to amend general law governing the program in violation of Article 3, Section 35 of the Texas Constitution, and to the extent it does, it's unconstitutional and of no effect. While the rider in question in 2002 placed statutory-type restrictions around money for the Historical Commission's Courthouse Grant Program, the situation we find ourselves in today is strikingly similar. I believe that the rider, Section 61 on page 280, attempts to amend general law. The rider specifically notes that it applies to funds appropriated to not only to institutions of higher education, but also to, and I quote, any component, constituent unit, supported program, or grant recipient for the design, implementation, or administration of DEI programs or practices. The rider goes on to discuss the Texas Constitution. I want to focus on the language grant recipient for a moment. For the sake of simplicity, I will use the University of Texas as an example. Accordingly to the university's website, approximately 16% of its entire budget income consists of grants and contracts or sponsored projects. These include awards from the U.S. Navy, the National Science Foundation. Of the significant amount of funds that this university receives, it's difficult to imagine that there are some of those grants that do not require its recipients, I believe we have testimony to this effect, to use some type of diversity, equity, and inclusion policies to be on record with the institution or a particular department. As such, the rider would have the legal effect of nullifying these grants. In fact, these grants between the universities and its grantors, if those grants required use of existence of any type of DEI policy by the university, in my view, this rider would create general law and as such is unconstitutional.
Senator West, I think you're talking about the rider they put in HB1, because our rider looks different. I think. I'm not sure which. We're not, the committee substitute's not going to have that in it. It's going to have this, I'm going to sub the Senate bill into the House bill. So we'll have our own language, which Senator Zaffarini moved to sever that during the process, and unfortunately you weren't with us because of the passing of your mother, but Senator Zaffarini severed it, and we had a vote, and it prevailed to put it into the budget. So when I substitute in the Senate bill into the House bill, the rider, there is a rider, but it's a different rider than I think the one that you're talking about.
Okay, I'm looking at that.
Does that make sense?
Let me have just.
Sure, you can have a moment, of course.
Where's the one in the Senate version?
And it was severed.
Can I have a second?
Of course, take all the time you need. We're all just sitting here and wait.
So what?
Take your time. Everyone's patient.
I understand that this is written.
Here.
I understand we're sitting at ease. This is very important.
Of course it is.
And so,
that's why I say take the time you need,
As a
Senator.
senator, I'd like to take my time and make certain that I'm doing it right.
Yes, sir. We respect that.
So you're asking for a short pause, Senator West?
Yes,
Are you asking for a short pause?
yes, sir. Thanks, Gil.
In the chair.
How much time do you need, Senator West?
I need to get that done. We gotta look at it.
Senator West?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I need a reasonable amount of time to review it.
You need what?
A reasonable amount of time to review it.
All right. The committee will stand at ease while Senator West reviews the rider.
Hold on. Is there a trash can close? All right. Almost there.
was talking about the Constitution. Actually, it's 50. It's 59. I had 61. We had the wrong one.
So, since it's intent language, it doesn't create them.
I need to ask a question about it.
Yeah.
And whose rider is this right here?
Senator Craig.
Senator Creighton?
Senator West.
Chairman, may I ask a question to Senator
You
Creighton?
sure may ask questions, Senator Creighton. And I think, Senator West, what we have, we'll be focusing on Senate Bill 1, will be substituted for House Bill 1.
Gotcha. Senator Creighton?
Yes.
I'm looking at,
Are we back in?
Yes.
Yeah,
well,
because they're down there on their phone.
I'm on page
Finance Committee's back.
281. All right, and it's section 59. Okay? As relates to the intent of the legislature as manifested by the rider that you put in, it says, may not expend for diversity, equity, or inclusion practices or similar programs. What are similar programs? What does that mean?
I think Matt, we're having all kinds of technical difficulties this morning.
Senator Creighton, I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question, Senator West?
Okay, I'm looking at section 59. And it says, it's the intent of the legislature, blah, 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 may not expend for diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, which I'm trying to figure out what those are, or similar programs. And then you say including, okay, which is it's a more expansive intent rider. So I'm trying to figure out what are diversity, equity, and inclusion practices.
Well, you asked about similar programs.
Let me start with diversity, equity, and inclusion practices.
You want to change your question? Okay.
No, I want to add to it.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just did.
Got it.
And what are diversity, equity, and inclusion practices?
Well, we've got, obviously in our, can you hear, am I talking into the microphone?
okay.
Right. We've got DEI programs in all of our universities, right?
I'm asking
So
what the
for
practice.
hiring practices, we have, and it mentions it in the rider, right? Including personnel, training activities, anything related to hiring practices. This isn't, for DEI programs specifically, this isn't about admissions, it's about hiring practices.
So solely limited to hiring practice.
And then you know that you and I have both invited representatives from our flagships to come over today into Senate Education that is convened now to, as we step out of here and go back into committee, to talk to those DEI representatives about exactly the same questions. Tell us about your program. Tell us about your progress. Tell us about your audits. All the things that you and I have been talking about in Senate Education as we've been sort of vetting the bill through the committee.
All right, so but for purposes of this intent rider, we're talking about hiring practices, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when you say or similar programs, which are similar programs?
Well, the rest of the rider language explains that, right? It's programs that carry out DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion-related hiring through the university itself. We've got, for instance, as you and I have also discussed, we've got 51 different examples of programs in our Texas universities. That list is not in and of itself completely comprehensive. Those are just examples of particular programs that are under the umbrella of DEI initiatives.
All right, so we're
those
saying,
similar programs would also, as the rider says, that would include personnel training or activities related to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, which, based on the listed programs I'm talking about and that we can share with your office, those are many examples in our universities now that include them.
okay, and again, I understand what the programs is. I'm talking about the content of the programs. That's the difference between the two, as we talked about.
Well,
May I respond? May I respond? And so what I'm trying to make certain of, given that this is a big issue, and I have very seldom been on finance, even taking this type of time on this, but this is an important issue. I'm trying to make certain in terms of legislative intent, in terms of what this rider actually does and what it's about. So there can't be any unintended consequences, because you know how that goes in this legislative process. So you're saying this applies specifically to hiring practices of the university?
Correct.
Am I correct? And that's your intent as the author of this particular rider?
Yes, so as affirmative action is being considered in the Supremes, that's related to admissions, right? So our reference to diversity, equity, and inclusion departments and units within universities would be specific to hiring.
Okay.
And then as we vet that through Senate Education further, as the bill's pending in committee at that time, this rider in the budget related to funding and that legislation that's related to policy would merge together, as we've seen many universities in the state have already issued directives themselves that they will be either pausing or winding down or removing DEI programs and units within their own campuses. We are also working in the legislature consistent with that, consistent with the governor's statements and intentions as well, to handle the same within our legislative session, so that there's clear direction and harmony between the efforts.
All right. Is it your intent by this rider to stop any efforts by universities, let me back up, under the auspices of DEI? Do you consider the hiring by universities of persons to go out and recruit, assist students to make the transition to university life and to graduate a part of DEI practices? Let me say that again, because we need to be real clear about this.
Sure.
Do you consider universities hiring university personnel, assigning university personnel to go out and recruit, help transition students into their universities, help students navigate university life and graduate a part of DEI practices?
So this rider is about hiring practices and DEI-related efforts involved with hiring.
Well, I understand what, but I want to make sure we have the intent of the rider, though, sir.
With DEI units and policies removed from the university, there's nothing that holds the university back from pursuing outreach, pursuing diversity, pursuing goals related to what we currently have protected in federal law as far as for hiring, equal opportunity employment, or Title VII protections under the Civil Rights Act of 1964, or any other related federal or state laws, as I mentioned.
So I take to answer your question, you do not consider that a part of DEI?
So let's take the $7 million a year that the University of Texas alone spends on DEI units and departments. They could go back to before they had a ramp up of DEI from 2016 through 2020. You could go back to their original mission, which of course is to make sure that as they pursue hiring practices that focus on the most competent and the hiring of those that through outreach and recruiting foster a level of merit first in hiring more than anything
Okay, well,
else.
I think you misunderstood my question. My question was simply this. Do you consider the university's hiring of personnel to go out and recruit, enroll, assist to go through the education process and mentoring, tutoring, and things like that, a DEI practice that would be prohibited based on this rider? universities need some direction, as we've talked about. And so I want, and people are frightened to death. That's why I'm taking this time. And
People
so
are
I'm just
frightened
asking,
to death.
employees of universities are frightened. Activities are being chilled as we speak today. That's why I'm asking you, as the author
Sure.
of what your intent is, and so people that are listening to us right now, and you can be assured they're listening to us,
Absolutely.
what the intent of this is. That's why I asked you the question. Are those DEI practices?
Senator West, I guess I'm puzzled by the question because university practices in hiring well before any creation of DEI departments or units were very effective, obviously.
I understand.
Yeah, Senator Huffman, I think.
Yeah,
As
so,
I under-
so
if I
I'm
can
not
just-
understanding the question
Yeah. Okay.
because
Okay,
many,
I'm going to
many
interrupt
more
for a
years.
second.
Yeah, yeah.
Because my understanding, Senator Creighton, is this rider that we have now before us was just a general intent rider. You have legislation, it's got to go through the House, and as that legislation develops, then an appropriate rider, which would be contingent upon your legislation, would then be crafted. Is that a fair statement? I mean,
I thought I had mentioned that earlier in
that's
my
how
answer.
I
but
understand this
yes.
process to be, so.
We have the bill, as I mentioned to Senator West, we have the bill pending in education now in the hearing today.
Right, it's kind of my point.
As we're jumping back and forth between hearing rooms, we have DEI officials coming to answer questions today in hearings, but it's a part of the process.
It's part of the process, and this was set as a marker to set the general intent of this committee. I understand, we severed it. There was a record vote, and, some voted no, and the majority voted yes, so it's in the bill, and that's where it's going to stay. And
Oh, that's fine. And I just
and
want to
this, you can have your discussions and your debates with the witnesses and so forth in the appropriate committee.
and that's fine. And, again, Madam Chair, out all due respect, this, in my community, this is a big issue because of history. And I have never, ever tried to sever something on the floor of the Senate as relates to the finance bill. But I will be compelled to do that this time because of the potential unintended consequences of this bill. And I'll probably be joined, hopefully, by colleagues.
Thank you, Senator West, and thank you, Senator Creighton. This time we have a committee substitute before the committee. Is there any objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. It's so ordered. Senator Huffman, you're recognized to explain the difference.
Thank you. Members, the Senate's committee substitute to House Bill 1 represents the Senate version of the biennial budget for fiscal years 24 and 25. It includes $308 billion in all funds and $141.3 billion in GR, and is within all constitutional and statutory spending limits. Specifically, the committee substitute to House Bill 1 assumes $16.5 billion in property tax relief. And I'll just go through some of the highlights quickly. Provides $1.8 billion for across-the-board pay raises for state employees, the largest raise in over 40 years. Adds $5 billion to public ed in different towards teacher compensation, special ed, curriculum reform, school safety, and school choice. Provides $3.7 billion on top of the $1 billion included in the supplemental bill for our COLAs for our retired teachers. Sets aside $10 billion to support the construction and operation of electric generating facilities under Senator Schwartner's legislation. Provides $1 billion in new funding to invest in the state's water infrastructure. Funds enrollment at higher ed institutions. Sets aside $2.5 billion for higher ed endowment fund. $650 million to reform community college funding formulas. Appropriates $750 million to an endowment to support capital needs at TSTC. Provides over $900 million in new funding for mental health care. That's on top of the $2.3 billion provided in the supplemental to expand inpatient capacity. Adds $2.3 billion to raise base wages for Medicaid community attendants. Maintains our efforts to secure the southern border with an expenditure of $4.6 billion. Invests $380 million to bolster law enforcement in our rural communities and district attorneys. Appropriates over $360 million in new investments in the juvenile justice system, $931 million to eliminate all unfunded liability on our judges' pension systems. Provides over $37 billion to the state's transportation needs, including $150 million for port capital improvement projects and $400 million to capitalize the Ship Channel Improvement Fund. $500 million to support new park development, additional $500 million for broadband, and reserves up to $500 million for the Gulf Coast Protection District projects. It also appropriates all remaining federal funding provided through ARPA towards eligible expenses at TDCJ so that the corresponding freed-up GR is available to address the funding priorities just laid out. Thank you all for participating in this process. I think it's a great budget. I look forward to presenting it on the floor. And with that, I move that we adopt the committee substitute, which I think you already adopted.
We
it.
adopted already.
But I move that House Bill 1 be reported to the Senate with the recommendation that it do not pass, but the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass and not be printed, right? Yeah.
All right. Clerk, call the roll.
Bittencourt. Campbell. Creighton. Flores. Hall. Hancock. Hughes. Colcourse. Nichols. Paxton. Perry. Schwartner. West. Whitmire. Zaffarini. Hinojosa.
Aye.
Huffman.
Aye.
15 ayes, no nays.
There were 16 ayes, no nays. House Bill 1 is substituted, reported favorably to the full Senate.
Right. Thank you very much. Members, that concludes our business today. So we stand in recess subject to the call of the chair. Thank you for leaving your committees to